Welcome into the OBR streaming network. This is the React. My name is Brad Ward. The man next to me is the always spectacular, fantastic, and insightful Pete Smith. Today we have a fantastic show planned for you. Big day as mandatory minicamp begins for your Cleveland Browns session day one. We've got Nick Chubb Fallout saying goodbye to a legend and much more around the AFC North to discuss. So all of that in today's show. How's it going, Mr. Pete Smith?
Good. Football things are always fun. We get 3 days of them as opposed to one. It'll be interesting to see how much overreaction there is for this one, since there's going to be 3 days of football stuff as opposed to two to project the entire quarterback situation from. So that should be informative, despite the fact we won't see pads for well over a month. But we might as well get it going.
Yep, absolutely. There's plenty to talk about today from, camp, the little tidbits here and there that we can discuss, some of the national perspective, and other things, but let's start with Nick Chubb. So the deal is done. He was seen in a Texans uniform today, a sad sight to see. Of course, he ends up departing, not departing, but signing with the Texans and now with the Browns. There are many people that are upset out there, Pete, about this outcome. Where are you at with everything, Nick Chubb? As we, I have a video here of their head coach talking about him a little bit in their press conference. But where are you at with everything, Nick Chubb, as he is now a Houston Texan, 100% for sure, and career probably done with the Browns?
Well, I mean, it sucks to see him go in any capacity. I mean, he's, to me, the second greatest running back in Browns history, behind Jim Brown, who I wasn't old enough to see. Only Jeff Lloyd of this staff was old enough to see Jim Brown. So from that standpoint, it's heartbreaking to see somebody that means that much to this team go. Yeah. But so much of the pain that's associated with it and the anger of for the people that have it, it's at the fact that he got hurt. I know everybody wants to say, well, the Browns are bad because they didn't, re-sign him, and that's unforgivable, this, that, and the other thing. All of this is a result of him getting injured. If he doesn't get injured, the Browns would have been content to pay him to run forever, and Nick Chubb seemingly would have been happy to run forever for the Browns. So that's where this thing comes down to, and that's unfortunately, that is football. Sadly, I mean, it's the modern day gladiatorial sport outside of UFC. These guys put their bodies on the line, and there are many times where it goes wrong. Careers are short. Sports in general is fleeting, and at some point you have to make a decision. And the Browns, I don't think there's a right answer, but because there's no good time to see him leave. But I understand the move that they made, or I should say, and both sides made this. Nick Chubb, for his part, chose not to sign what the Browns had offered him, and chose to sign with Houston Texans. Look, this puts all of it on Andrew Berry. And say what you will, I think that takes a little bit of, I don't want to say guts, but I think it's the right play for him. I think he has to be the one that owns this, for a variety of reasons, not, Deshaun Watson included, in for one small reason. If Deshaun Watson was good, or the Browns had a quarterback that was good, even if Nick Chubb were to get hurt, I think there's more momentum for him to stay in whatever capacity he's in for this one more season. But the thing that I can't get away from is there's so much enthusiasm, and we're going to talk about it, with Shedeur Sanders. People, they would be thrilled with Dylan Gabriel to win the starting job as well, or Kenny Pickett if these guys can be a great quarterback. But I'm going to focus specifically on Shedeur Sanders. There are so many people who desperately want this kid to succeed, win the starting job, and become the franchise quarterback.
Sure.
And if he doesn't, the Browns are almost, which is probably the likeliest scenario, in that the Browns are going to be in the market for a quarterback next year. But for the sake of argument, Shedeur Sanders wins the starting job. He battles through camp. He's stacking good days seemingly in May and June. Hopefully that continues into July and August when they have pads, and ultimately he climbs the ladder and wins the starting job. There, you are simultaneously having this group of people who want to move forward and move into the future on offense. Do they really want to see Shedeur Sanders take the snap, go into the backfield, and hand the ball to Nick Chubb at this point, at what is a likely physically compromised version of Nick Chubb? And I think people who are going to lie to themselves now and say yes, but if he there's a couple problems with that. One, if he's not the same player, there is a contingent of people who will be mad at Nick Chubb if it also means that it hurts Shedeur Sanders and that he's not good. There will be people out there who yell and scream at Nick Chubb because he is hurting Shedeur Sanders from succeeding. And that's awful. So that is where I look at this situation and I go, good on Andrew Berry for doing this and taking the brunt of the blame, because everybody's going to yell at him and make him the bad guy. Fine. And in many ways, he warrants it. He's the GM of the team, and some of the other decisions he's made sort of allow you to get to this point. The other part, which I think is important, is we're going to talk about this for a week, and then we're going to move on. The story will move on to something else, and maybe we'll revisit if Nick Chubb has the Kareem Hunt 2024 year that he had with the Chiefs, which I still think was underwhelming, but nevertheless, there are people who said, "Oh man, I wish we still had Kareem Hunt." If that happens, then you're going to sit back there and look. But here's the thing: you don't have to now deal with. One, you don't have to constantly ask the questions to the head coach and everybody else on the team about, or Nick Chubb. You don't have to ask Nick Chubb about Quinshon Judkins or Dylan Sampson or any of these other guys. That
doesn't change in Houston, though.
It does. Here's how. If the Browns, screw up a situation, or Quinshon Judkins makes a mistake, or Dylan Sampson makes a mistake in a game, and Nick Chubb is on the team and he's not on the field. We did this when he was healthy. They will do it even if he's not, and they will say, "Well, Nick Chubb should have been on the field. He would have made it happen." Even if you could literally explain to people, it's just not there. He's not going to be that guy. There are still going to be people who think, no, Nick Chubb would have made it work. He would have figured it out. He would have made that play. And the other part of this aspect, Kevin Stefanski has freely admitted that Nick Chubb is his favorite player.
Yeah.
He does not have to be thinking about this in terms of coaching the team. He is now freed up because of Andrew Berry to act in the best interest of the team without any hesitation. Which he
should do that anyways.
He should, but that's going to be an issue if people are going to sit there. Well, again, you should have given the ball to Nick Chubb, or even if he's having second thoughts or whatever. He
can't coach based on what the fans are saying. That's an issue.
I agree with you, but it's still going to be a conversation that you and I are going to have to deal with in that scenario where people are going to, the Browns should have done this. Kevin Stefanski should be fired for not giving the ball to Nick Chubb in this situation, this, that, and the other, whatever.
Okay.
Quinshon Judkins has an enormous amount of pressure. Again, I think Nick Chubb is the second best running back in Browns history. Quinshon Judkins taken 36th overall, 7 years after Nick Chubb is taken 35th overall. He now has to fill those shoes. That's a ton of pressure. It's even more pressure, again, if Nick Chubb is sitting right there and he can't be that guy. Like, the running back, you'd like it to be a situation where you just have a room and you can just give whoever the ball in the situation. But it's different because they took Quinshon Judkins 36th. It'd be the same thing if you took Ashton Genty in the first round. You have made an investment that says this is the guy. Granted, they took Dylan Sampson, they have Jerome Ford, but let's be clear. You took this guy 36th overall. He is the guy, and the Browns are telling you he is the guy with everything they've done in this thing. Every report you hear at a camp, if you ask people about who looks the best at running back, it's Quinshon Judkins without question. So this eliminates that potential factor of, this whole past versus the future thing. And again, Shedeur Sanders, he wins that job. He's handing the ball to a fellow rookie, Quinshon Judkins, and you get these visions of, okay, what can this now be? That is where I sort of end up on this whole situation. The other problem you run into, everybody wants Nick Chubb to beat the odds and have resurgence. If Nick Chubb can't do it, the Houston Texans can cut him. And no one's going to sit there and everybody will just sit there and go, okay, it didn't work. I guess he's done. No one wants to have the conversation and sit there and go and look at Nick Chubb and go, he can't do it anymore. The Browns have to cut him.
They basically just did that anyways.
I think it's different because again, Nick Chubb could have signed the qualifying offer and he'd be here. He didn't. He made that choice. Whereas if now, and I'll go back to Bill Belichick, there are people in Cleveland, Browns fans, who still hate Belichick for cutting Bernie Kosar. There's a visceral reaction for a certain amount of fans for cutting Bernie Kosar. The Browns have now taken themselves out of a situation where they have to sit there and show you and go through a camp. And there are people who, and one of the guys I feel awful for in this whole situation is Jerome Ford. Jerome Ford hasn't done anything. And there are people who hate Jerome Ford because they think he's taken Nick Chubb's spot. I really don't want to have to go through a training camp where you now have to see that Jerome Ford is better than the current version of Nick Chubb. And that part of it, I don't think people are ready to handle and would, again, continue to take it out on Jerome Ford and hate him for simply doing everything he can to be successful, and hate the team for putting everybody through this and going through the process of then what they would perceive as embarrassing Nick Chubb, tarnishing his legacy, and this, that, and the other thing. I look at this as you're walking away from Nick Chubb potentially a year early. Hopefully he's great in Houston. Great. He goes out and helps them do whatever they're going to do. Fantastic. The Browns have to move on from their standpoint. And I understand it. Even again, they could be dead wrong about this. And if they're wrong, Andrew Berry is going to have a parade of people outside of Berea looking to jump on him with both feet. But here's the thing. He's used to it. He's a big boy. He can handle that. Again, you want to call it brave or whatever. I like the fact that he was willing to take that on and take the pressure off of Kevin Stefanski, having to answer the questions every day, taking it off the pressure of trying to take some pressure off Quinshon Judkins and these other backs who have to go into this and try to be the best version of themselves. I don't want Quinshon Judkins to be, basically almost feel guilted because he's sort of taking over, taking carries away from Nick Chubb. This gives them a clean break. There is no good way for this to end, but it had to end at some point. That's the impermanence of sports. And I don't hate the way this happened. The one other thing that I think really worked out for this, and as much as anything can work out for this, if Nick Chubb signs with the Houston Texans in March, this is a nightmare. We're dealing with this for a month. One, you don't have these other running backs already in the lineup in Cleveland. You don't have all these other things playing out where you can sit there and look at sort of the new puppy and move on with that. If this happens in March, I think this would be an absolute disaster for everybody and not unlike the draft having endless conversations. Ultimately, they proved largely meaningless at the second pick of the draft, given what transpired. Every week, you and I would have been talking about the fallout of Nick Chubb. Again, I think the way this worked out, I think this is going to be a much shorter story, and I think people are going to move on. It was interesting. I heard Chris Fedor, I saw him make a prediction that basically said Browns fans will talk more about Quinshon Judkins versus Trevion Henderson, the two Ohio State backs, the fact he's with the Patriots. I agree with him because Nick Chubb is in Houston. If he was still in Cleveland, I don't think that would be true. I do think
it's fair.
He's going to end up being proven right. And part of that, as much as I root for Nick Chubb, I just don't think it's going to be there. I think it's going to be, unfortunately, not very good based on what I've seen of him. I'm rooting for it to be better, but like some of the training videos, and I'm not talking about squatting or jumping over things. I'm talking about the videos that were posted of him cutting looked bad. They did
and
not.
That was a couple months ago, and
that was a couple weeks ago.
Okay, a month ago, and he was running up and down a hill, and I mean, he didn't look all that bad. He certainly the shot I looked of him in camp, he looked a lot thinner than he did 3 weeks ago. The shots I saw of him today,
but and here's the thing, and obviously, it drove the point home just how much it sucks to lose him. One. Good on the ownership for immediately saying we're going to induct him in the Ring of Honor. It's a small gesture, but an important one. And then you see the highlights. Yeah. The various highlights, or you read, Jacob Roach doing the top 5 moments. That guy is not coming back. Houston or anywhere else, it's gone. What he was able to do when he was his best. Again, the second best running back in a franchise history that has unbelievable running backs, Marion Motley all the way through. That guy was special. The elite physical talent, the intelligence, awareness, and feel to do almost anything he wanted on the field, just even from the first play of his career to now. And what we've saw, unfortunately, and again, this is where you hate the injury, that has been taken away from everybody, all of us, and especially Nick Chubb. And that's the other reason I think it's probably going to end up being better that he's gone now, because I don't think people are going to want to watch him basically potentially be reduced to obsolescence over the course of training camp, or God forbid, we're in a situation where Nick Chubb has to take preseason reps because he has to prove himself, or he's got to go back and do kick return reps because he has to be able to do more to warrant making the team. I think that clean break is ultimately prudent. Again, no good way to do it. I understand why people are obviously hurt by this. The anger, I think, is a little bit misplaced just because there's just no getting what he was back.
My only pushback would be this. He either has it back or he doesn't, right? So, like, regardless of whether, like, he can go to Houston and not have it and be their third running back and not do much and be on their roster for whatever, or they cut him at some point, right? Whatever happens, right? If he does have it, then he's a compliment to Joe Mixon. And they're a 1-2 punch, right? In Houston. And he has a little bit of a resurgence, right? Either way, he's not your bell cow. And
Correct.
Here, he wouldn't be your bell cow either. I'm just saying why I don't understand. Like, he either has it or he doesn't here as well. But the difference is if he doesn't have it here, he still means so much more to your team, to your locker room, his presence. It validates the Browns somewhat, just having him around. And we talked about it for a long time that he is always going to have more value to the Browns than any other team, just because of the culture that he has created and what he has around him. So whether he has it or not this year, and whether he's running back 3 or he's a compliment to a 3-headed monster at running back, if he gets it back, either way he impacts the locker room in a positive way.
Yeah, but here's the thing: you're already talking about him like
I'm saying one or two options either way. Either he has it back or he doesn't physically, but if he doesn't, he has a more of an impact here.
Potentially, but we're talking about him like he's a relic at this point rather than a player.
No,
and I think that's part of the reason he left.
A part of a three-headed monster. I just said if he has it back.
I understand what you're saying, but like,
I'm
if
being
he
realistic.
doesn't, if he's not that player, we are treating him like this is a ceremonial thing. I'm limited in how much I can speak for Nick Chubb. I don't think he wants to be viewed as the guy who used to be Nick Chubb in Cleveland. And
he's going to be viewed that no matter where he is.
Well, I think it's different in Houston because I think
loved here.
For Houston, there's an element of he's trying to prove to be a productive football player. Like, I think it would I would hate to see Nick Chubb in a situation where he's sitting there questioning himself and going, should I make this team over Jerome Ford? Like, in a sense of, if they keep me, it's I don't want to say charity, but we're on the verge of charity at that point, where we're saying we can't. I mean, Andrew Berry can't cut him. He just can't.
I know. I'm not, somebody saying I'm not signing him to be a mascot. I'm saying that he has had a positive impact on the Browns every season since he's been here. He makes an impact. He's part of the Browns' identity. I'm not making him a mascot. I'm saying he has a chance to be somewhat productive. When you have an injury like he has, it's the year after the year that you're hurt that you come back. Like we saw the year after he got hurt. And to your point, he may not have it back. But I just would have preferred them to make a better push to try to keep him here. That's where I'm at.
He could have signed for the $2.8 million and been here for months. And he's obviously been in the building at points because he had to rehab here. But at some point, like he's effectively getting the same contract as J.K. Dobbins. Like that is what he's viewed at right now. He's J.K. Dobbins, which is you're taking a flyer on a guy. J.K. Dobbins is reportedly signed for quote unquote $5.45 million. It's $2 million with incentives, which is exactly what the Houston Texans are giving Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb wanted to be in Cleveland, but he wanted to be in Cleveland at a certain price point. And that is where this dragged out. That is unfortunately, and I can't argue. I'm not going to tell him he shouldn't get what he thinks he's worth, but that's the reason he's ultimately not here. And I don't know how much you want to pay a guy to again, optimistically be your second best running back.
Yeah.
And again, that's optimistically be the second best. I mean, and if he's third, I mean, it's $2 and something million to do that. And then overall, I mean, you can make the case that's pennies on the dollar. Again, this is why I just think it's so much simpler to say clean break. We're moving on. We're looking to the future, and we're not trying to, give him some ceremonial walk-off. Here's the thing. I don't rule out the possibility that Nick Chubb at some point during this year, potentially by the end of training camp, basically says, look, man, I don't have it. I cannot do this. Requests his release, signs with the Browns, and retires. That is how bad I think the situation is. Its health. It's not. He did not get an ACL tear. It's not even Achilles tear. His knee effectively exploded again. It's the worst of worst injuries. He's already come back from it once. Strong as hell. But man, I just and the other part that's worrying from Houston's standpoint, at least from an outsider, I don't know who the hell's blocking for him. They got nothing over there on the offensive line. That's entirely an improvement. It's a great flyer for the Houston Texans because if it doesn't work out, it's a shot. You took a swing and it didn't work. And the Browns have done this any number of times with other teams' former players. For the Browns, there's just too much weight. There's too much gravity. And again, I think at some point there would be fans who would be either pissed at Nick Chubb because he's not what he was, and people would hold it against him, and two, that
if he's not, here's my only point. If he's not what he was, he's going to sit in Houston. If he's not what he was, he would have sat in Cleveland. Where is he more of an impact?
Which is still, no one wants to see that. No one wants to watch Nick Chubb on the bench.
Okay, but you can't tell him to retire. I'm just saying, like.
But this is the NFL. This is what happens. Most players don't decide to retire. Teams stop calling.
Right.
The league made a pretty clear evaluation of what they think Nick Chubb is at this point.
I get it. I get it. I was just trying to present the other side of the argument. Like, I know there's a lot of people out there that feel this way about that they would just rather have him here. And I get your point. It makes some sense.
I hate the fact that Houston, because I'm already annoyed as hell about the Deshaun Watson trade, and there's this extra element where if Nick Chubb, is able to have a resurgence, it's like not only did we lose the 7 draft picks and the $230 million, which is tying up the Browns and all kinds of cap issues, but they also take your most beloved player as an add-on. It's like the absolute nightmare from that standpoint. In some ways, I'd almost rather you go to Pittsburgh. The only saving grace with him going to Houston is the Browns don't play the Texans. That's the only saving grace.
Yep. The Texans are just keep feeding off of the Browns in one way or another. But I totally get your point. Nobody wants to see him cut. Nobody wants to see him not be himself. We already saw shades of that last year.
Yes, to your point, I'm sorry to cut you off. We already started, people having started, whether it was talk radio. I know Anthony Lima started doing this last year and was like, I don't know, man. I think he's not that guy. And there were already people.
Right.
And again, it's like, you're like talking about putting down your favorite pet at that point. Like, how long do we want to keep doing this? And it's awful because that's how beloved he is. But I don't want to go through a season of doing that. I don't think fans really want to do that as much. Like, I totally sympathize with anybody who's sitting there. I want to hold on to the feeling of Nick Chubb as long as he can. And my hope is that whenever Nick Chubb calls a career, that he's instantly going to come back, hopefully talk, and be around the organization in some capacity. Because if your main concern ultimately is financially, I promise you Nick Chubb is going to be okay in terms of the Browns continuing to pay him to do something. It's just a question of what that is, and it won't be on the field.
I just I know certain people would have just rather had him on the roster, and there was a certain point in the offseason where I felt really strongly about that after they drafted the 2 running backs, less so. But I think it's you make good points about it being better now than later. And we're just trying to present that there are a lot of people out there that are hurt and mad. So here is real quickly, because we are on the react here. This is just real quickly Texans head coach talking about acquiring Nick Chubb.
Humble kid, doesn't say much, but he's a grinder, a worker. And the one thing that sticks out about him, like, he's been through a lot, right, with the injuries and things that's happened to him. So just to see the resilience, to see him battle back, work in the right way, to put himself in position to have another opportunity here in Houston, couldn't be more excited to add him to our team and see what value he can provide to us. And just on the same note, I would just like to, just thank Nick Caserio for just his tirelessly hard work and dedication to our team, to making sure, no matter the circumstances, making sure he's doing everything possible to enhance our roster, put us in a good position to compete each and every year, despite the circumstances that comes up. Like, he's always looking to make us better, and he's done an outstanding job every year that I've been with him, and couldn't be more pleased to work with Nick with the job that he's done.
Nick Chubb is pretty renowned as a blocker. Is that something that's important for you in your running backs?
You say renowned as a blocker?
Right now is for Nick to just.
Yeah, he said he's pretty renowned as a blocker.
Interesting. Good. Fan fiction is fun.
Get acclimated to how we do things we all know the caliber of player that Nick can be when he's healthy and when he's at the top of his game. He's a dynamic player. He's a game changer. So we're just easing him in. We'll see how far he gets, come back training camp, ready to go. Oh, CJ threw today, right?
Okay, that's enough. But yeah, I mean, he's good in pass pro, right?
He was good. He was good. He was okay last year in pass pro. In general, he's been okay at best. They've always had somebody else do it whenever possible. And here's part of the problem. Let's get into it from a football standpoint. Part of the reason Nick Chubb makes sense not to be here is something you've been harping on all offseason. They don't have any wide receivers. So Nick Chubb does not give you much in the passing game. Browns need their running backs to be able to contribute in the passing game because they don't have a dynamic receiving corps. Hopefully the tight ends can carry some of that burden, but whether it's Judkins or Sampson or Jerome Ford, who does have a skill set in that department, they need more out of that position. Unfortunately, Nick Chubb, first and foremost, is one of the most prolific runners of the past 25 years or whatever. He has his moments catching the ball. It's usually on screens and stuff, but it's not like Nick Chubb is running a route tree. Every so often he's got a great highlight, but for the most part, he's not running what you'd call a route tree and becoming a real asset. You've got to put it on him to get him to catch the ball and all those other things. With where the Browns are going, they need more from that. The Houston Texans are in a completely different element. Now, granted, they have beyond Nico Collins and Dalton Schultz, they have unproven guys. They drafted both Iowa State receivers. They love Iowa State recently. But whether Joe Mixon can contribute in that department, but Nick Chubb is there to run.
They need Damian Pierce, don't they?
Huh?
They still have Damian Pierce too.
Yes, they do. Who they use as a kick returner, as the Browns know, because he's the guy who returned to the house. And they drafted, I believe they drafted the kid out of USC in the 4th round this year too. So the Texans could end up cutting Damian Pierce, and that's probably likely to happen. But if they don't, it's because they cut either Marks or Chubb. Like, that's the problem, is there isn't a whole lot of room. But like, Nick Chubb is the freedom to just be a runner for Houston. That's exactly what they need to be. They have CJ Stroud, they have Nico Collins, they have Dalton Schultz, they have the receivers. The Browns are going to have what could very well be a rookie quarterback at points, Jerry Jeudy, David Njoku, and we'll see. And that's unfortunately not helpful for the whole David Njoku thing.
Yep. It's a great question, Kramer, and we'll get to that. All right. We're watching the React. We're going to transition from Nick Chubb over to day 1 of mandatory minicamp. I'm going to start off with this video just because it kind of encapsulates what is actually happening here in Cleveland. Rich Eisen does it so well here.
About to hear. I very rarely introduce things this way. What you're about to hear means nothing.
Exciting.
No, I know, right? I build it up, and then I cut it down. Right?
The air comes out.
What we're about to hit, this piece of news, means nothing. Absolutely nothing. But at the same time, wildly enough, means everything. Because
on June 10th it does.
It's now.
Yeah.
It's now. It's June 10th. And the first, let me get this exact date, the first Cleveland Browns football game that counts in the standings does not happen until September 7th. Home against the Cincinnati Bengals.
Kind of a big game.
So here we are, just a little bit from 3 months away. Okay? We're shy. We're past that point. On Saturday, this was happening Saturday. Oh, my goodness. First of all, we wouldn't be here to talk about it or hype it up. But it would have been exactly 3 months to the day when the Browns play their first game. So I'm hyping it up by saying it means nothing. But on this day, it means everything. Because we're talking mini camp. We're talking 11 on 11 which is what the Browns are going to play on September 7th against the Cincinnati Bengals. It'll be 11 versus 11.
I'm not.
Unless
We're not based on what I've seen with the
somebody
Bengals so
forgets
far.
wrong on
That's
the
not
field, but
clear.
that's neither here nor there. It is
Might be
now
11
time to get this
7
information.
when the Browns have the ball.
The first snap of 11 on 11 competition for the Cleveland Browns. The quarterback for that first snap was
drum roll.
Who is it, Chris? I don't know. What you're revealing to me right now.
I'm revealing information to you.
I don't know.
Daryl Reader, 92.3 The Fan in Cleveland, is reporting on the Twitter box. The first true 11 on 11 QB rep goes to.
Let me guess. It's Pickett.
Dylan Gabriel.
What the hell?
That was going to be my guess. I was just going to say that to be funny.
My eyes see.
Wow. That is massive. Unless it means absolutely nothing.
It means everything, Rich, obviously.
My eyes see.
Dylan Gabriel.
Dylan Gabriel.
So what does that mean? You know what it means?
I don't know.
Well, did he win a quarterback room-wide contest of rock, paper, scissors? Or start, bench, cut?
Ooh, we just threw a touchdown to Jerry Jeudy.
Did he really? How did it look?
Looked pretty good over the middle. Probably would have got tackled at like the 20, but they let off of him, and he scored a touchdown. And then there's another clip Daryl Reader also posted. Myles Garrett would have absolutely destroyed him into the ground, but then he stopped and let him get off a throw.
Could you imagine?
So
Dylan Gabriel being planted by Myles Garrett. Oh, man. What would that look like?
Here's another one.
I would love to see
Absolute
what that
dime
would
to
look like.
Jamari Thrash.
That was nice.
It was nice.
Enveloped Dylan.
It was a nice play. All right, so I just wanted to play that because I thought it was very amusing. National media making.
He's right. He's right.
Absolutely nothing. Yeah.
I saw more stats today that meant absolutely nothing. I saw more numbers. And people running with them like they have some concept of mattering.
Yeah.
Dylan Gabriel's numbers, whatever. He's going against the first team. Shedeur Sanders is cooking Dom Jones, in particular, on the one that was to Gage LeVarden, which is a really nice route by Gage LeVarden. He cooked him
3 times to Gage. Yeah.
Beautiful ball. Look, to his point, it's June 10th. And I don't want to take anything away from Shedeur Sanders. I want him to pass every test he's presented. I want him to stack good days. I want him to stack good throws. But they aren't playing with pads yet. He's not going against the first team yet. Let him do it. And the same point is the people who covered it, the people who were there who didn't just write down numbers and ask Dylan Gabriel if he's played with big people before. Those guys, all those people came away going, yeah, I thought Dylan Gabriel was kind of impressive today. And in the same vein, that doesn't mean Dylan Gabriel is going to be the starter or that he's ahead or that he's anything at this point. I want to see these guys get reps and figure it out. I want Shedeur Sanders to cook against the third and fourth team guys so he can then move up and get opportunities to play against the bigger, better opponents. But Dylan Gabriel, to his credit, and one of the things that stood out is it's a whole lot more fun when David Njoku's on the field than when it's just Jerry Jeudy and guys.
Yes.
But he made a couple of really nice throws. But that's all they are right now is a couple of really nice throws. And yes, on the one, DeJuan Jones clearly goes the wrong way on the pass protection. Everybody else is blocking down seemingly, and there's a couple double teams. As they're going to go play action, suddenly Dylan Gabriel's like, oh my God, there's Myles Garrett right in my face. And Quinshon Judkins, who's trying to release on the route, is trying to think to himself, am I supposed to stop and block him? Or maybe it's better that I don't because I don't want to get cut for taking out the $40 million defensive end. But it's fine. We're going to get 2 more days of this, and that's great. I want to see this. I want to see Shedeur exceed. I want to see Dylan Gabriel learn and develop. And I want to see where this ends up in July and August. And the person, to his credit, I cannot stand how most people are talking about Shedeur Sanders in Cleveland. And the one guy who seems to get it is Shedeur Sanders to this point. Who's saying I'm just trying to be the best teammate I can be. I'm just trying to learn. this was a rare day for Mary Kay Cabot in terms of some of the questions he asked, and they're not wrong. It's just they set up beautifully for her to look really out of touch. When she asks Shedeur Sanders, a 5th-round rookie who's just trying to make the team right now. That's all he is. And I know everybody wants to jump ahead and go, oh, man, he's going to make the team. And God bless Jeff Lloyd, who's saying, I already think he's going to start the most games of the season. You're out of your mind on June 10th. You may be right, but on June 10th, you're out of your mind. Where you jump ahead to you jump to conclusions and go, are you planning on getting together with receivers or quarterbacks for the break? And I love the answer from Shedeur Sanders. It's like, I'm just trying to get through today and tomorrow. I believe his exact words were, I'm just trying to get through walkthrough later today. I find his attitude very refreshing. There are certain things that he says are just weird, and that's fine. But like from a process, him and Dillon Gabriel very process oriented, which I appreciate. Dillon Gabriel super process oriented to the nth degree, which is I think why he's successful in the way that he is. But like Shedeur Sanders seems to get it in that like, listen, I got to have a good practice today. I got to have a good walkthrough today. I got to then take the steps. He's taking this the way it is. He's not looking ahead, which is, I think, really important, especially for these young players, because in some way,
all the right things. Yeah.
They are swimming a little bit, and not in a bad way, in this way that they are now in the NFL, and they're trying to figure this thing out. And like, and I tried to make this point in something I wrote earlier, where let's use the example today. Gage LeVarden, who played his last year at South Carolina, was a transfer from I don't remember what school, where he was the primary receiver and then transferred to South Carolina, did exactly nothing for them.
It was a MAC school.
Yeah.
I forget.
Anyways, no one is going to look at those clips and go, Gage LeVarden's going to make this team. Not even willing to go that far. In the same way that the last OTA, nobody's sitting there jumping out and going to say that the little receiver from Miami of Ohio is going to make the team, or Caden Davis is going to make the team, because those guys making plays, and that we can see. Cade McDonald's the little one from and he reminds me, and I cannot remember the little white guy's name, who was one of the receivers many years ago, who was all hype in training camp and everything, and then never did anything in the NFL, but people were outraged that he got cut. When people see Shedeur Sanders do these things, they immediately go, not only we can't just stop it, it's a great play, it's immediately he should be getting first team reps, he should be the starter, he's going to be great. We don't do that with these other guys. You should have, and what I would suggest, and again, I don't want to sap enthusiasm. I love the fact that people are excited about Shedeur Sanders. It's legitimately fun. It beats the hell out of Deshaun Watson, sucking the collective life out of all of us. Shedeur Sanders is so much fun from that standpoint. But what I would plead with people is just say, Shedeur Sanders had a great day. Tuck that away in your pocket and be like, I hope he's able to do that again tomorrow. I hope he's able to do that the next day. Rather than jumping to a conclusion, because you're not going to do that with these guys he's throwing to, and they're playing against the same defense that he is. And yet you're not going to do that because you have the sense to realize that it's not that big of a deal, and you've got to wait till they're in pads and everything else to do this. But we don't do that with Shedeur Sanders. And from some standpoint, in part of because of the way he's gotten here, it's like every good play from Shedeur Sanders counts about like 3x. And unfortunately, it seems like every good play Dillon Gabriel makes is like half X. And that's really unfortunate. And I don't care. I genuinely do not care who wins the job. I would be thrilled if one of these rookies takes it, but I don't care. I'm rooting for Browns have good quarterback. That's all I'm concerned with. And I'm genuinely open-minded to see how this thing's going to play out and go with it.
Well,
I have any number of concerns with Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett, of all the guys, terrifies me the most. But I'm still open-minded and willing to say, okay, show me something.
I would say, yes, I am with you. I don't care who it is. I want some good quarterback play. Although I would say it makes the most sense long-term for it to be Sanders, size-wise, whatever-wise, I hope that he ends up being the best of the bunch because he's on a rookie contract. That's beneficial. B, you know what I mean? He's not Kenny Pickett, and he actually has some size. So for those reasons, I hope it is Sanders. I would say this, James.
How could you
possibly
know this?
Know that? You're not at practice. How do you know that?
You are citing meaningless stats. Here's the problem. Yeah. Here's the problem with completion percentage in OTAs. Let's say, and I'm not saying this is what happens, but let's say I believe Shedor's numbers were 10 of 12 today. It doesn't. I'm even ignoring the fact that Dillon Gabriel was going against higher guys on the depth chart for most of this, and Shedor wasn't. I don't even care about that. Let's take that entirely out of the equation. If Shedor Sanders checks down 10 of 12 times and it counts as 10 completions, is that better than Dillon Gabriel potentially trying to attack down the field and it falling incomplete, or the ball is dropped by a receiver, or any number of other things can happen? What is ultimately more value? What if Shedor Sanders is completing passes on reads that he is wrong? What if he's not doing what he's prescribed to do? What if he's not doing what he's coached to do? And Dillon Gabriel is. Ultimately, this is why I hate these stats. They make you dumber. Because if you watched it, and I poked fun at this at the last OTA, when Shedor Sanders ripped a beautiful ball to Caden Davis. Well, guess what? He stepped out of bounds. Doesn't count. So on your stupid OTA stat, it's a 0. Even though it's a great play and a play to learn from and play to get better at, and a play for Caden Davis to say, man, this is a great play. He stepped out of bounds, so it's 0. It means nothing. So erase it. It completely meaningless at that point. That's so insane to me that people are going to jump on this crap that they don't know. And I doubt one, and I see you saying Nathan Zegura told us. I doubt he's saying that Dillon Gabriel is not getting better. I would be stunned if Zegura is saying that.
And if he is, though, the same thing applies. He has only been allowed to be there the same amount of time. One day the first week, one day the second week, and today. You're missing like 6 practices in there you're not accounting for.
Right. That's the other problem is, like, by the end of like the whole summer little process before they go on vacation, the Browns, I believe, are going to have 12 on-field practices. And people are ready to make lasting conclusions. I've tried to explain this. The Browns are absolutely going to give these guys homework over the course of that 6 weeks off or whatever it is before they get back to training camp. They are going to see where these guys grow, how much these guys put in the work. They're going to rest on the fact that because there are 4 quarterbacks competing, that there's going to be a little extra push, that these guys training their own are going to work a little bit harder. They are going to get stuff that's specific. They're going to be able to sort of be specific to the playbook. In other words, concepts they know are going to be there because they've been working on them. So now they're working on those throws. It could be how they're taking a drop. It might be different than they did in college, and they've got to get accustomed to that. It may be getting some extra work with some of their teammates or whatever. It could be, mechanical stuff that they've been working on throughout the offseason process, and they're continuing to firm up. But when you sit here and tell me, listen, man, CBD's great. It's propaganda. But straight up, it's propaganda.
But he's also not watching all days. I guarantee you, if you ask him, he's not watching all days. He has the same press availability as he doesn't have advanced press availability. He is allowed to see the same practices as everybody else.
That's true. That's true. And by the way, congratulations to Zegura, who did just have a child. But I doubt he's at minicamp watching this.
And Z is great, and I love Zegura. He's fantastic. And Buke, you know what, man? We are excited about Shedor. We want Shedor to be great. We totally. Pete just got done saying the excitement is fantastic. It's so much better, but we can't make these wild assumptions based off of a couple days of camp.
By the way, and then to say, well, he played at Colorado. Here's what playing at Colorado got him. He was picked in the 5th round, and I picked apart his tape. I'll tell you straight up, he can throw a beautiful ball.
No,
I told you he's going to be very good in 7-on-7. He's built to thrive in this specific setup because he's such a talented passer. But when you get on pads, he did a whole lot of stuff. He even admitted as such in his press conference today, talking about how he took too many sacks. Like, spare me. And to say that he's not going to get a fair chance, like, based on what? You're basing it again on OTA statistics. You're basing it on I had a 2nd round grade on him, and with all those issues. But here's the thing: the NFL said 5th round, so you can decide what you want. I gave him more the benefit of the doubt than they did, and I can still pick apart any number of things, and did so in detail throughout the draft process. You can tell me all you want about Colorado; they got their ass kicked by BYU, and by guys who are not playing on Sundays at BYU. So spare me. He has every chance to get better. There's every incentive for the Browns to not just give him a fair shake, spare me fair shake. They want him, if he has that much ability, they want him to start. They want whoever can be good to start. One, because they really would like to win some football games. And 2, there is every incentive for them to go with anyone but Joe Flacco if they have a ton of ability. Every incentive.
Here's the thing, guys. Once again, in the chat with this whole thing, whatever. I'll ask Zegura if he has access to every practice, since that's what he told you guys, apparently, even though, as Jeff points out, his wife had a cesarean on Monday, but he was at camp. Either way, I know that they don't get advanced access. I know for a fact that, but I'll ask him. I have his number in my phone. I'll text him and ask him, and just to make sure that I'm not wrong on that. But since he told you guys that, whatever, I'm going to leave it alone. The point is this: we're all excited about Shedeur. I mean, I want Shedeur to be great. I want him to be amazing. I want him to be the guy. Like, what? I don't know what you guys are fighting us about. We all excited about this.
Puka Nacua was not playing in the bowl game when they absolutely ripped apart Colorado. Not even, stop. Like, the idea that, like, everybody expected Shedeur to go in there and cook that team, and they got destroyed. It was one of the many things that was not good, and got walloped by mediocre pass rush and defense.
But none of that matters now.
No,
none of it matters now.
But this idea that why would the Browns draft a kid and then engage in a conspiracy against them? It makes no sense.
That's my point. That's exactly the point. That is exactly the point. You guys act like there's someone out to, like, get him. Listen, they want him to be great. They want him to be great. They want him to be amazing. They want him to be the guy. They're bringing along as they best see fit. And I don't understand. Nobody is trying to put you down, truth teller, Maxwell, you guys, that nobody is trying to put him down.
It's terrible. It's terrible. It was terrible last year.
But once again,
they don't play any defense.
Besides the point, though. That's besides the point, though. We want him to do well. Like, you guys can say whatever. Statistics in OTAs are ridiculous. You have to realize that. Like, you guys have to think beyond, like, it doesn't matter what the completion ratio was in practice. Ugh. You don't even know what the coaches are looking for in those plays. You don't know. An incompletion could be more meaningful than a complete pass. You can't put meaning on that stuff.
Well, the idea that to say Browns front office and media can't convince us that Pickett also acquired for 5th round pick, 40-year-old Flacco, and 5'11" Dylan Offerty Hope, then it has nothing to do with what we're talking about on the field. Mm-hmm. We're not even going to evaluate. We're just going to say that these guys can't do it, and Shedeur should. Like that. And that
already made up your mind.
That is really where this is coming from.
The whole thing comes from
a preconceived notion that Shedeur Sanders is already the best option. Let him do it. I've pleaded even with his father, and I hope his health is able to recover. I don't know what the story with that is, and I thought it was a little awkward that it's clearly Shedeur doesn't want to talk about it publicly, which I totally respect. Let Shedeur do it. If he's that good, and I hope he is, he will be. It will be there to prove. But if you are a better player, are you going to sit here? Are people going to sit here and cite OTA stats if he's not doing as well?
Stop with the stats, guys. The stats don't matter in OTAs. 83% completion courtesy of the QB tracker. Nobody is. Those don't matter. What are you talking about? You don't know how silly you sound. It does not matter what their completion percentage was. And to Richard, your point, you're yelling for no reason because anyone can see that Shedeur is better than Gabriel. That's your opinion. And I just want, like, I do want Shedeur to win because I think he has better size and I think he has a higher ceiling than Gabriel. I do want him to win, but he has to go win it. You can't just, like, you guys are coming in with this conceived notion that any other opinion or anything else besides Shedeur is winning and he should start is nonsense. You can't come in with that preconceived notion.
And if you put him in the first team and he stinks, you will be in here saying that the Browns sabotaged him.
Yes. You have to let him earn it. You have to let him get there, just like they're doing with everybody else. They're not giving anybody any advantages here.
So, anyways, like, regardless of how they handle it, it's going to be a conspiracy against Sanders if he's not.
No matter what,
because even if you give him the starting job, there will be and he goes out and stinks out the joint in his first game. There will be people who are then saying it's everybody else's fault that he wasn't good. Like, at no point do we just let the kid grow. And if he's not good in his first game, we'll see what happens in the second game. I want to see this kid get better, but like. Let's be clear. The overwhelming likelihood is the Browns are going to be drafting a quarterback next year. Everybody on the roster currently, other than Joe Flacco, is trying to make the case that they shouldn't. That is an extraordinarily steep hill to climb. The quarterback class is very talented, far better than this one. And we're going to see where they end up.
Respectfully, Rodney, there would be no narrative because
tell you, I don't care. It's
percentage.
Joe Flacco's completion percentage today was 0. I don't care.
Joe Flacco didn't throw a pass today. And by the way, Pete, you had that a long time ago.
Right.
But either way, you guys know that nobody ever took statistics in OTAs until Shedeur arrived. This is the first year that has actually ever been a thing. So, because it's pointless, okay? Because it's pointless. OTAs.
Where was the outcry for DTR to get first team reps as a 5th round pick?
Yeah.
Like, at what point do we understand that there's a process to this and he's going to either fight and work his way up the depth chart or he's not? And we are insisting on treating Shedeur differently, the last pick in the draft, as opposed to everybody else. Is anyone going to where are the Dylan Sampson people going? Dylan Sampson should be getting first team reps. Or Jerome Ford should be getting first team reps or whatever. They are going to play this out. It doesn't matter again, this idea that
does not matter.
DTR was not scouted as a first rounder. Well, neither was Shedeur. He was picked in the 5th round.
Doesn't matter where they were taken.
It's an open competition to a point, but he was picked in the 5th round. The 32 teams said for 4 rounds, no thank you. So, like, we have to deal with reality as it is. I would love for him to succeed. I would love for him to be a story that he's able to take the world by storm and give the Browns a quarterback that they desperately need and bring the same level of excitement as Baker Mayfield steps in the field against the New York Jets and they open up the beer fridge. But, like,
Pete, I'm more optimistic than you on this. I'm willing to say, like you're saying, they're going to, odds are that they will likely use. Yeah, probably odds are that they will likely use that on a quarterback. But I am willing to, I want to see it through with these guys. I want to give Shedeur every chance because I do think he has enough talent to do it. And,
How many
like
5'11" left-handed quarterbacks in history of the league have been successable? How many 5'11" left-handed quarterbacks have there ever been in NFL history?
I know.
Like, it's a tiny percentage.
Which brings me to this question. I'm gonna get off this topic.
And I don't even like you and I like. I understand why the Browns made the pick. Dylan Gabriel is not my taste. Like I've been very clear about this. He was overrated.
I almost had a DTR meltdown on Gabriel, the Gabriel pick. I hated the Gabriel pick.
So I just want to see these guys figure it out and work it. And Kevin Stefanski needs to find success here. So if Shedeur can give it to him,
then he'll play.
Yes.
And he'll be great.
And if he's great,
we'll all be happy.
And you're welcome to come and tell me how you knew it all along that Shedeur would be great. But I'm going to tell you the same thing. It doesn't mean very much to cite stats at this point in the calendar. I want to see, what does it look like in July, in August? And I've said all along, for people who are haven't been here, I don't want Joe Flacco or Kenny Pickett to take a single preseason rep. I want Shedeur and Dylan Gabriel to get them all. Every rep, because that's what preseason should be for. I want
the stats don't matter at all right now. Let's not even pretend like they matter a little bit. They don't matter at all right now. They don't. So, but you got to let you guys all want him to succeed. We want him to succeed. We want to win football games. If that means Shedeur it plays, then fantastic. That's wonderful. I'm all for him being the guy. I actually prefer he be the guy. I didn't like the Gabriel pick, and you know how I feel about Kenny Pickett. So God knows I want Shedeur Sanders to win. I hate Pickett, and I didn't like the Gabriel pick. I hope Shedeur Sanders wins it.
So
but
to answer the
question, you
question,
gotta let him win the job.
Did I play college football or play in the league? No. And cite how stupid that is, you're basically saying women can't talk about football, which sounds insane to me. Before the draft, did I honestly say Shedeur is not a first-round pick? Yes, over and over and over again. I said he was a second-round
multiple
pick. He won the end of the first round, but I had him as the second-round pick. I've written about it. I've documented it over and over and over. You can go back to any number of episodes where you talked about this. I did not see a first-round pick. I was validated on that, but I was still stunned that he went in the fifth.
His fall to the fifth is not justified. That's more about the people around him than him. But once again, let's not pretend that whatever happened to him in the draft is going on here in Cleveland. Nobody wants to see him fail. They all want to see him succeed.
Okay.
So that narrative needs to stop.
Who in 2026 class is vastly better? Drew Aller, Carson Beck, Garrett Nussmeier. Drew Aller, I don't care about Carson Beck. He's the non-factor to me. Garrett Nussmeier, not really my taste, but I suspect he's going to go much higher than Shedeur did, and is interestingly enough a very similar style. Drew Aller, had he come out this year, he would have gone ahead of Shedeur. That you can lock that up. There were teams desperately hoping that Aller was going to declare. But you want to go deeper? Cade Klubnik from Clemson has a lot of people excited. Very, very talented. Had a big improvement this past year. Needs to take another step. Another kid that's going to get a ton of buzz. I think it's too early. I think he needs to stay in another year. Lenora Sellers, he's 19. He's a giant human being and super athletic, needs a lot of polish, but he is literally 19 right now. So he'd be coming out basically at 20 years old. You're going to get, again, I treat Arch Manning as a non-factor. Even if he plays every game, he's going to have nowhere near the experience, but there are people who are taking him seriously and will say he's going to be the top quarterback. There are a number of other quarterbacks in this class who are very well liked that are going to go be rated high, including another Big 12 quarterback, Levitt from Arizona State, who led them to their conference championship and everything else. There are, and that doesn't even include the possibility that we're going to see somebody go from Cam Ward, who was projected 5th round pick, to the top pick in the entire draft. Some of these guys could falter and basically have what Carson Beck did, but it's going to be a whole lot of talent. There's a lot of people excited about it. Todd McShay is losing his mind over this draft class already. It's insane watching him sort of break these guys down because he can't contain himself. But a lot of guys out there, a lot of potential. Some smaller guys like Kevin Jennings could be interesting. We're going to see what Nico does with UCLA. But Yeah, I sort of have the same reaction, but nevertheless, he's a thing. So there's going to be a lot of quarterbacks that are going to be.
Best case scenario is to not have to take one, Pete.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Again, nothing would be better than Shedeur Sanders, Dylan Gabriel, or Kenny Pickett. Even though I think Kenny Pickett's unlikely, I think Dylan Gabriel's unlikely. If one of these guys can seize the job and prove they are that guy, then now the Browns have a first-round pick, 2 first-round picks, a second-round pick, and a third-round pick to build around them, and they need them all. To even if they get the quarterback right, certainly would make the team infinitely better. I mean, I look at Washington's team. Jaden Daniels is phenomenal, but I look at the rest of that roster and it's not great. But he was just such a force of nature that he was able to elevate everybody else. If Shedeur can do that, by all means, bring it on. But like, it's not happening June 10th against third and fourth stringers, and we'll see. I'm hoping he will get his shot. I'm hoping he will work his way up and get shots against guys higher up in the depth chart. The Browns defense should be a really tough test for any of these quarterbacks to go against, given the talent that should be on that side of the ball. And not to mention the fact that there aren't, we'll see what Deontay Johnson can do. But beyond Jerry Jeudy and David Njoku, you're sitting there going, I don't see a whole lot of guys. So it could be very, very tough sledding. So at the moment, the Browns are making the choice they are, which is to let Shedeur sort of cook against the guys he is, build his confidence that way. And he seems more than fine with it.
He does.
So we'll see where that goes. But this job isn't going to be won until July and August.
Right. It will be won in the joint practices and as they get into training camp. But he has put together a solid, start. Today, 11 on 11 reps, which I don't care about the stats, but as far as the reps go, you had this at the beginning, no Pickett or no
Joe Flacco.
Joe Flacco today. So you called that a long time ago.
You got to watch him run through bags. But yeah, I mean, look, he's a luxury in that sense that he allows you to get so many reps for these other guys who need every single one of them they can get. And I think he's going to get Veterans Days off in July and potentially August. And then if the Browns decide that Joe Flacco is going to start this season, that he's going to ramp up and we're going to see more and more and more, but there is no reason to tax his body and his arm any more than they have to. I mean, Joe Flacco he is genetically predisposed to just throw a football, but we are looking across the league. CJ Stroud has been dealing with shoulder soreness. Trevor Lawrence has been dealing with shoulder soreness. I am more than happy to have Joe Flacco take a very leisurely approach to getting reps and doing more about what the hell would I apologize to Shedeur for?
Yeah.
I would love them to take a very leisurely pace with Joe Flacco so they can get Shedeur more reps, so they can get these other guys more reps and get them to learn as much as possible. I think that is, again, the word I will continue to use with this is luxury. The Browns are using every edge they have to sort of work their way through making it so that, a 4-quarterback competition in many ways is unrealistic and not sustainable unless you grow the pie of reps or you find ways to limit the field. This was a day where you can limit the field.
They're doing both of. And as you called out, Flacco doesn't need the reps. Give the reps to youngsters, which they did today. It was first session, 11 on 11 reps. Gabriel and Pickett on one field, Shedeur on the other field with the 3s and 4s or whatever. Second session, 11 on 11. It was Gabriel and Shedeur. And then all 3 of them in 7-on-7s at the end. but no Flacco, which makes sense. You got everybody else more reps instead, which is important. Interesting question here posed from Stephen Kramer. Do you see any truth to the Kurt Benkert rumor?
I know what he's talking about.
About the Dolphins wanting to trade for Dylan Gabriel.
So I like Kurt Benkert. He got this wrong because he tweeted out that he thought the Miami Dolphins liked Dylan Gabriel and then suggested that the Dolphins traded pick 98, their third round pick, after the Browns took Dylan Gabriel, like in response to that. The only problem with that is they had already traded the pick in the second round. Having said that, I always thought Dylan Gabriel made a ton of sense to the Miami Dolphins. I thought he was a guy that
does make sense.
And if you were, I've heard all these people say, I don't think Dylan Gabriel was going to be picked X number of picks here. The team that I always thought made the most sense for him was the Dolphins, because Tua, shorter left-handed quarterback, very quick, reads things really well. That is Dylan Gabriel. So in that sense, it was a really good fit to get essentially what a perfect complement to what Tua does. So even though Benkert's sort of foundation for his argument is flawed, I do think there's a scenario where the Dolphins could be very interested in Dylan Gabriel. Having said that, I've said all along, I could see any of these quarterbacks gone by the end of training camp, just by virtue of the fact that they're not married to any of these guys. In fact, Dylan Gabriel is theoretically the guy they're tied to the most, just by virtue of the money he's owed. But if they were to trade him, it's not as big of a deal. Still, we'll see. I continue to say, and even though I think it's the unlikely scenario, the best case scenario for the Browns is that they feel so good about everybody, all Kenny Pickett, Shedeur, and Gabe.
No, you froze up. You there? You froze up there. What'd you say?
I still say that the best case scenario for the Browns is that ultimately they feel so good about Kenny Pickett, Dylan Gabriel, and Shedeur Sanders that they are willing to move on from Joe Flacco. I just think that's a very unlikely scenario. In part, because of what Myles Garrett said today. And no, I do not believe that Myles Garrett was told by Andrew Berry that Joe Flacco was the guy he was going to get. I do, however, believe when Myles Garrett said, he's Joe Cool and he's a very professional quarterback and he gives you that feeling. I do believe that's legit. And I would bet that a whole lot of people in that locker room feel the same way.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. Let me ask you this. You're watching the React here on the OBR streaming network. So let me ask you this. So the second team offensive line today, this is what I heard or was reported on CBD. But Jackson Barton at right tackle, Cornelius at left tackle, Zach Zinter at right guard, Whippler at center, Tevin Jenkins at left guard. Now, outside of Barton, that sounds like a pretty nice backup offensive line, with the exception of my questions about Whippler. So,
here's the problem. My guy, Aiden Huntington, keeps whipping Luke Whippler's ass. And now, granted, there are pads on, there's all these other things. But my dude out of Tulane keeps doing things to make Luke Whippler look bad. And again, you can't really take anything meaningful away from this. However, getting Jackson Barton allows the Browns to get the setup they want, which is DeJuan Jones and Cornelius Lucas in direct competition. That is what they want at left tackle. They want to see those guys go at it as much as possible. Obviously, the best case scenario is DeJuan Jones wins that job, but they're not going to mess around. Mike Bloomgren has no loyalty to any of these guys, so he's going to put the best guy on the field. But certainly, you'd like Jones there. Tevin Jenkins, on the same rep where Aiden Huntington whips past Whippler. He absolutely destroys. Was it Holly?
Yeah.
And again, it's not padded, so you feel a little bad, but he just bulldozes him down the line. And you sit there and you go, well, this is why they brought in Tevin Jenkins, because that's what he does. I don't know how much you really – I mean, I agree with you. It does sound like a credible line. I don't know how much stock I put into that alignment in terms of where they are, simply because so far Zinter has played 3 spots. He's played left guard, center, and right guard to this point. And Tevin Jenkins can play 4. Cornelius Lucas can play both sides. Jackson Barton can theoretically play both sides. Whippler's the one guy that can't move.
Which is what makes me feel better about it, because it's like if those 3 guys were healthy, right? In theory, if you had Zinter, Cornelius, and Jenkins as your backups, like you would feel like you had them covered unless all 5 went down. You know what I mean?
Right.
My question is how they threw Jackson. They wasted no time in throwing Jackson Barton right into right tackle, a dude that has played legitimate snaps at right tackle for the first time in his career last year.
Well, I mean, he's been in the league since 2019. He was drafted in the 7th round. And the reason I'm familiar with him is because I loved his brother coming out of Utah as a linebacker, Cody Barton. Jackson Barton has been around. He's just, he's practicing. He's going to be 30 in September, I believe.
I know, but because of the ATI question, I went and checked his snaps. Until last year, he played nothing but special team snaps.
Yeah, I know. Like 150 last year. The only thing that sort of stands out to you about Jackson Barton is that he is the same height as both Jones and Lucas. They are all 6'7", so they have towers. Now, is there any part of that where they want to put the towers around Dylan Gabriel and see what happens? I don't know, but it's at least interesting to sort of think about. Again, Dylan Gabriel, who talked about playing with a 6'10", 6'11" tackle, who's in his final year at UCF, by the way. I did look him up. He's a giant man. I can't help but wonder if that is part of the thought process. If Jackson Barton may or may not matter in the long run, other than being able to get reps, but he does stimulate the size that those other guys would give you. I mean, he's literally Jack Conklin at this point is your shortest tackle.
Yes,
he's a large man in his own right. But look, this is night and day difference from last year for reasons they couldn't necessarily control, but still, the line looks infinitely better because they're healthy, because there are guys out there. There are guys that can compete. They don't have pads on, so it's diminished in terms of what you can really get out of it. But they have at least 7 professional guys right now. Hopefully they can develop more, that you feel instantly better about the health of the line, something that has killed this team the last 2 years. That has to be a priority. And obviously Mike Bloomgren is old school, was with Stanford during the height of their run. Joel Bitonio comes out at the golf outing and is talking about how the Browns need to get back to their old DNA and running the football. That is what Mike Bloomgren's going to do. I love it. DeJuan Jones has been a god-awful run blocker for his career. I'm hoping that between everything he's doing to improve his body composition, and he looks good. He looked really good. That he can also become a more productive run blocker this year, and they get that going, because everybody realizes that is critical to the Browns' success. I think the 2 offensive assistants that have the most pressure on them for this season are Mike Bloomgren, the offensive line coach, and Deuce Staley, the running backs coach. The quarterback's coach, obviously there's a lot of pressure on that position, but again, it's not the same as when you put a 2nd-round pick at running back and when your offensive line struggled last year and you needed to be fixed desperately and you didn't get investment. So there's extra pressure on them to sort of make that work.
Unfortunately, DeAndre, they do not have Michael Dunn anymore. Did Dunn go to the Titans?
He may have. I don't even know if he may or may not still be floating around the league. But if he is, he's probably with the Titans because Bill Callahan has collected all those guys with Tennessee.
Yeah, so Dunn is not around anymore. Rodney, we already discussed that. What would be a rumor about. And once again, it doesn't matter where they were drafted anymore at all. So yeah, my concern there, though, Pete. The guy I have a question about sincerely on the offensive line though is Whippler. It's like, can he do it? Can he actually?
Yeah, I don't know. I loved him at Ohio State in terms of just the way he played the game. It's so unfortunate because he's just little.
Yes.
In as far as I can say that anyone practically 300 pounds is little, but it doesn't help. And this was true at Ohio State. When you're on a line where you sit there and you look to your left and right, and you have DeJuan Jones, who made Paris Johnson, who was 6'6", 310, look like his little brother. And now you're in Cleveland where DeJuan Jones and Cornelius Lucas are both 6'7", and they are just towers compared to Luke Whippler. It's just, there's just more pressure on him. Now, the one thing that is working in his favor, the Browns, you mentioned Jackson Barton. The move they made was that they had to waive Justin Osborne with an injury designation. I don't know what the injury was. Justin Osborne was a really undrafted rookie, interesting undrafted rookie at SMU that I thought might have a chance. But right this second, there are only two pure centers on this roster. It's just Posick and Whippler. Now, Zinter taking reps is important, but I don't think that's for the sake of Zinter being a center. I think that's for the sake of, on game day, they need three guys who can potentially snap, and Zinter is the emergency situation where if the first two guys get hurt, they got to have another guy who can snap. I will be very curious if at some point we're going to see the Browns try to bring in another center, because if they don't, they're basically saying Whippler's that guy. Now, fortunately, he will look slightly bigger when they put pads on, but just the way he has to win is just his feet, his technique. He has to be he's always been a dog in terms of his work ethic and just the way he approaches it. And again, some of this, he can't do that in OTAs or mini camp. He can't freaking constantly work these guys and potentially create a pile and get guys stepped on. So he's naturally at sort of a little bit of a disadvantage. So when you get to like this, just the initial shove, he will look bad. And I think this is unfortunate, the unfortunate part of getting these clips, in the same way that Dom Jones looked really bad when Gage Lizardin just cooks him off the line of scrimmage. And you said there, oh my God, this guy can't possibly make the team. That's where, you don't get the body of work. You get a very brief window in time, and you hope that that is not the norm, but we shall see. Again, got to see if the Browns are going to try to bring in somebody else if they just deem it necessary. They're not going to do it for minicamp. So if they're going to do it, it's going to be probably closer to when they get to training camp if they want to bring in another body at center. If they basically decide to use this minicamp and that last little stretch of OTAs to sort of make some decisions on some of these guys, potentially I could see a wide receiver or two get cut to make room for something else that they want to bring in and bring added competition when they get to there in July.
I have a question. Do you know whatever happened to Nick Harris?
He was in Seattle. The Browns traded for him back, and then he got hurt again. I do not know where he's at this point.
I cannot find him on a roster anywhere.
Well, if he's a free agent, he may be the guy that the Browns decide to bring back.
According to Wikipedia, he is still on the Browns, although he's not at the moment.
So, I mean, like at that,
which is weird.
Could be an injury. I honestly don't remember if he got hurt last year or not. It could be an injury situation where he's technically still part of the team because of the injury. But if he is healthy, his familiarity might be a reason to bring him back for training camp as competition, or they'll move on and go in a different direction.
I always liked him. I wish he would have worked out.
Well, I mean, the Browns going back to more of the stuff they did when they drafted him would lean into his strengths, I think, in some ways. So if he's healthy, that would be a reason for them to want to see if he can come back in and compete. I do think the Browns like Lou Whippler, by the way. To your point, like some of those clips don't look very good. But listen, my dude Aiden Huntington is just that good, at least in shorts.
So funny. Zegura said he is not a journalist. He is a Browns employee who has access to attend all practices. He said he is more informed about Browns than anyone allowed to speak. I know Nate for a long time. I've never heard him talk like that. I would love to.
This is the thing. He's not pretentious like this. And here's the thing.
He's not.
I got this whole thing before the draft where all these people kept yelling at me and going, well, Zegura says they're going to take Shedeur Sanders number 2 overall. So it's going to happen. How'd that work out?
Yeah.
And again, this is not a shot at Zegura. I like Zegura.
I like him too.
His energy is refreshing. He's got a lot to say. And even though he's technically, paid to be propaganda, he is, I think he gives his honest opinion more than most people do. And his whole thing for the whole draft process was he was essentially rooting for them to take a quarterback at 2. Did it happen? No.
He can't. There's a limit to how critical he can be because he is an employee, Buke. So you've got to take that into consideration as well. Although, to Pete's point, he is more honest than most in his position. But his energy is terrific. He's great. So
part of the reason he gets to be as honest as he is, and be able to be free flowing with his opinions, is because he doesn't have to sort of pretend he doesn't know things he knows.
Yes.
Like whether it's deliberate or just the Browns' way of operating, it seems like they make it a point to sort of keep a wall between, obviously the main football operations and him and the broadcast side, so that he can be as exuberant, energetic, and all the things you love about Zegura, without ever worrying. Like if you do that much like on air talking, at some point you're going to say the wrong thing and saying something you shouldn't have. So I love him for what he is. He's extraordinarily talented. Between the stuff he does for the Browns, the wrestling stuff, which I cannot believe he does, especially knowing how many children he has. I don't know where he finds the time, but he is
he's generally
uninformed enough to be himself.
Yeah. He's generally just an all around really good person and good dude. I just say that about him. Very good dude. So, and I respect his opinion 100%. He did say, Buke, he did say he wanted Shedeur 2 overall. He did say that.
How much did he talk about Mason Graham in the draft process?
Right.
He doesn't know what he can't know. Like, these are the things. So, I mean, I don't know what I'm not listening to him every day. I will catch stuff when there's stuff that's, specifically of interest, like talking to interviews, because I think he's really good at the interviews. I think some of the interviews they do in-house are great because people are comfortable and they're more inclined to talk and elaborate, which I think is really valuable. I just don't think he has enough information to do that. And I don't think he claims it either. I think that's the part. I think people put this on him that he is this super informed and knows all these things, and he doesn't. It's so I think people are being unfair to him in that respect, and they don't do it with anybody else. It's not like they're sitting there going, well, Bo Bishop knows more than anyone else does. He works at the same place, or Siciliano or anyone else. It's specifically Zegura that people put on him, in part because Zegura, before he got to take this job at CBD, he was a fantasy football guy and a guy who did draft coverage and was obviously really talented in both those things. This is a thing that Zegura would be doing even if he wasn't working for the Browns. So I think that lends into part of the reason people think he knows more than perhaps he does.
So I would say this, Buke, listen, Yeah, I think he probably has a better feel for the building more than most because he's there every day. He certainly does talk to players in interview form, and made otherwise, but he does not have access to all practices. That's just incorrect. They don't just let the guys that call their radio show have access to all practices, especially once you get in the season. All practices are closed, and he has talked about that in the past. So I know that this is like new to you, but like I've listened to that show for years and years and years. So maybe he has had access to OTAs. I don't know. I'll text him and ask him.
He did for some of them, because one of them was basically, I should say rookie minicamp in particular was practically live streamed, save for the team period. He was there for all of it, but
all of the press was there.
Yes.
So my understanding is that press, it's either way. Let's move past it. Will had a good question here, Pete. Which QB do you think has the best chance to thrive in Tommy Rees system? And you aren't allowed to say Jalen Milroe. Is it a Tommy Rees system? I don't know. I mean, how much of this is Tommy Rees?
Well, I mean, clearly it's going to be a marriage of some form with Kevin Stefanski and Tommy Rees. The other thing you have to consider is Tommy Rees is not building an offense. You mentioned Jalen Milroe, who I really liked in the draft process, and I'm very bitter that the Seahawks drafted him. But Tommy Rees isn't stupid. Like he realizes Jalen Milroe is not on the roster, so he's not going to design the offense to do the things it did at Alabama when he had Jalen Milroe. So look, the Browns are going to, whoever the offense, whatever the driving force behind the offense, Kevin Stefanski, it's ultimately going to be formed around that player's identity. So what is ultimately going to tell you what is a great coach, and one of the many reasons I have such admiration. I think Kevin Stefanski is a really good coach, and I'm hoping this year he gets to sort of remind everybody he's a good coach after last year, is because he's been able to form an offense around so many different quarterbacks and get good results. He got a game-winning drive out of DTR. He got a game-winning drive out of PJ Walker. He was able to form an offense that was reasonably effective with Jacoby Brissett. They obviously caught a little bit of lightning in a bottle with some caveats with Joe Flacco. The one guy where it stunk was Deshaun Watson. So to say who's the best fit, I think ultimately the answer to that question is who's the best quarterback? Who is the best guy? And right now, you're probably going to lean towards Joe Flacco based on the experience. But I don't get the sense that I don't get the sense that any of these guys are going to come out of this out of if you got them sort of sodium pentothal and you got them very honest about the situation, where whether it's Kenny Pickett or Joe or Flacco, obviously, or Shador or any of these guys who are going to say, the offense just didn't fit me. I don't think we're going to get that. I think the things they do are, one, part of the reason they assembled the room they did. And then two, they're going to form the plays and the play call. And again, we've talked about this in the past. They're not doing it in practice, but if we were to get to the game, Kevin Stefanski has been very open to the fact that if quarterback tells him, I don't want to run this play, he's not going to run it. We get this whole thing where there was the Flacco offense versus the Watson offense versus this, that, and the other. The reason those things have a distinct footprint is because the quarterback is saying, this is me. I want to do these things. I don't want to do these things. And Kevin Stefanski is willing to allow them to sort of put their best foot forward and put themselves in the most comfortable position. He wants them to be super confident. So when he calls the play and they're going to line it up and they need to make it happen on 3rd and 7, that quarterback's ready to rip it and make the right play.
Absolutely. Well said. All right, you're watching the React on the OBR streaming network. If you haven't yet, take a moment to hit the like button down below. Make sure you're subscribed and hit the notification bell so you know every time we go live with multiple shows a night here on the OBR streaming channel. Garage Beers is up at in about 25 minutes here next after us, so hang around for them. But I want to go now, Pete, to real quickly around the AFC North. There's a lot going on here in the past couple days, so let's hit this stuff quickly. Pittsburgh quarterback Aaron Rodgers has landed there and is in uniform, and no TJ Watt at mandatory minicamp. What a shame. So let me ask you this, though, first about Rodgers. I have proclaimed, not on this show yet, but I'll make my proclamation now, that this is the year the Steelers go under 500 for the first time with Tomlin. I proclaimed that on my other show and truly believe it, especially now that Rodgers is there, thoroughly making it as toxic as possible. Do you believe that I could be correct, or do you expect him to raise that room and raise that offense?
Interesting the way you phrased that. Could you be right? Yes, you could be right. Here's the problem as we sit here on June 10th.
Will I be right? Sorry.
As we sit here on June 10th, the Bengals are not in a good place. I cannot. Joe Burrow is openly telling you.
They're next on my list. They're next on my list. Yeah.
They're openly telling you that the Trey Hendricks thing is a distraction. So I will leave that there when we get there. So from that standpoint, I think the Bengals, as we sit here on June 10th, could be in for a world of hurt.
Yes.
I have major concerns with Pittsburgh. Their defensive line is outstanding. I'll be very curious to see if their defense can continue to sustain. Does this issue with TJ Watt get worked out?
What's the resolution there?
Contract. Yeah, I mean he wants his money.
Yeah,
and all these people who are saying, "Oh, the Browns are stupid for paying Myles Garrett and getting it done and all this other stuff." Well, how's it taste? Because now TJ Watt is not just missing OTAs. Now he's missing the mandatory minicamp, and it's not like a good situation. Now they have dudes. Alex Highsmith's a very good player, and Cam Hayward and all these other guys are talented players. But here's the problem with the Steelers as I see it. One, they have a wide receiver question. They've got a very talented receiver in what's his face that they got from the Seahawks, DK Metcalf. They're counting heavily on Roman Wilson to step up in year 2. And then they've got the secret weapon who never gets enough credit, which is Calvin Austin III. That's precarious. And to this point, our Freiermuth, who's very talented, is having trouble staying healthy. And the Steelers seem to be trying to trade for every tight end on the planet, whether it's Jonnu Smith or Kyle Pitts or whatever, or they're at least considering these things. The offensive line for the Steelers needs to be way better this year because obviously it was young and invested. Broderick Jones has to block Myles Garrett. I do not like that for them. And Aaron Rodgers is 41 years old and just got married and all this other stuff. That's interesting in the sense that at some point I'm curious to see if Aaron Rodgers is going to do what Tom Brady did in his final season, where he's just like, I'm not interested in taking hits. I'm going to dive on the ground. I'm going to spike it. I'm going to get the hell out of the play as soon as it looks bad, and I'm going to move on. I'm very curious to see where that thing goes. Are they going to be able to run the ball?
Yeah, great question. I mean, they still have the good back. They're a good back, although they got rid of Najee. They still have, what's his name? And they drafted a back, didn't they? Oh, Pete's frozen. Oh, there you are. Who did they draft?
I don't know how they're going to be able to run the football this year. That's going to be a huge question for them. If they,
because
not unlike the Browns,
line?
They took the kid out of Oregon who needed shoulder surgery right off the gate,
Yes.
right off the rip to repair torn labrum.
They also took Caleb Johnson.
Who
and
I don't know if I
Jalen
love
Warren.
that fit.
And they still have Jalen Warren, who I like.
Jalen Warren, very good. They move on from Najee Harris and get Caleb Johnson. So not unlike the Browns, if they can't run the ball, this could get very ugly very quickly.
They, when you look at their roster, I don't know. It just doesn't appear to be of the same caliber that it has been in past years, especially on the back end. They're relying on, how old is Darius Slay at this point?
Old.
Joey Porter Jr., who to me is questionable. Beanie Bishop Jr.
Intriguing. He was a guy I kind of hoped the Browns were going to get as an undrafted free agent when he signed with them. He's made some plays. The big thing is
Elliott, Patrick Queen.
Yeah, Patrick Queen did not have a good year last year, which
no,
not surprised. And the other question is how's that defense going to come back out last year if they laid down in the playoff game, including most notably Minkah Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
How is that going to go? And TJ Watt coming out of that season going, all these things have to change. I think Pittsburgh has more concerns than they are willing to acknowledge. But listen, you can complain a lot about what they do. They find a way to 9-8. Now, is it going to be tougher this year? Schedule, everything else? Yes. Are the Browns going to be good enough to give them problems? To be determined. But again, sort of segueing, I am terrified if I'm a Bengals fan.
Yes, back to the Bengals. The Bengals are going through it right now as some wild clips from so not only is Hawkinson holding out, they released Jermaine Pratt, and now Shamar Stewart is holding out on his rookie deal, saying that the stars in the locker room are telling him, I have his back, and telling him to hold out.
Not only that, BJ Hill, not at minicamp. Dax Hill, not at minicamp. 4 guys, 3 of which would likely be starting for them on a defense which is crap, are not there, and their first-round pick is not there. So, and obviously you just mentioned they got rid of Jermaine Pratt. Their second-round pick, who is at minicamp and participating, also unsigned. The Dr. Knight, who's 27 years old or whatever, that they drafted. The Bengals defense is terrifyingly bad. And to have this much disruption now is really not helpful. Now, again, they're not in pads. I don't sit here and go TJ Hendrickson's suddenly not going to remember how to play football. Or Trey Hendrickson's not going to be able to remember how to play football when he got there. But BJ Hill not being there is not good. And then Shamar Stewart's situation, I feel for the young man. That interview is very open and honest and sort of revealing, and is a horrible look for the Bengals franchise. It looks awful because it looks like
it really does.
The Browns have the Bengals first on their schedule. The Bengals' first game on their schedule is ownership, and that's not a good situation to be. They are literally in a battle with their own team. As I said before, Joe Burrow calling it a distraction. Their offense may have to score 40 every game the way they're going. And the rest of this division has sort of trying to structure themselves to be able to run the football. The Browns, going back to their old school, if you want to call it that, what they've had success in the past, they want to get back to the ground game. Baltimore, tremendous ground game. Pittsburgh would like to be able to run the ball. The Bengals stunk playing the run last year. They haven't been able to stop anyone really since DJ Reader went down and then left. They have a couple guys that they've brought in over the past, they brought in 2 defensive tackles last year. The Chris Jenkins Jr. and then the kid from Mississippi State. They didn't do a whole lot, but we talk about defensive tackles. It takes them a minute. They're still waiting for their former first-round pick, Miles Murphy, to sort of step up on the defensive line. So, if that element doesn't work, and Trey Hendrickson was the only guy creating a pass rush last year. He was it. So if they don't get more out of that, they are going to struggle. And I don't think they're going to make the playoffs again. And then by virtue of that may be what sort of allows the Steelers to sort of cruise into second place. And it may be like an ugly AFC North year where like the Ravens potentially, finish 12-5. And then everybody else is sort of like 9-8. And then potentially 2 teams under 500.
Will asking a good question about the situation. Why is this going on with a rookie? Have they changed some sort of structure, or like did they change their philosophy on rookie contracts? I thought this stuff was pretty much framework is set in place for the most part.
Because of where Shamar Stewart was picked, 17th or whatever. They don't want to guarantee the whole contract. Basically, you draft a kid and you go, oh, we think you're going to be great. We think you're going to be the best. We think you're going to be all this and that. And then immediately the Bengals are like, we think all of those things, but also if you fail, we want to make sure we don't pay you the money that we're doing this. We want to make sure we get offset language. We want to make sure this is this, that, and the other thing. And the Browns, meanwhile, have guaranteed 36th pick his whole contract.
Yeah.
They're going to do the same thing with Quinshon Judkins, whatever their agent gets around to it. Like the hay is in the barn at this point on that element. So like the Bengals are just fighting a lost battle and they know it. And to Shamar Stewart's point, I don't blame his teammates at all for saying, get your money and do this thing. I saw Demetrius Knight sort of opining on this thing, and he was asked about it. He was basically comparing his situation, saying that he decided he's going to practice without the contract and this, that, and the other because he's love of the game. That's a trap.
Yeah.
We saw this happen with the Browns.
Yeah.
With Baker Mayfield and Duke Johnson.
Yeah.
Now we've got one rookie talking about another rookie's money. And he's not meaning to do it in a harmful way. He's not saying he doesn't support him or anything like that, but he is saying, I love football so much. I love this so much. I want to do right by this so much that I'm practicing without the contract. I don't think that's going to, I think that will not sit well with people. And I don't mean anything against Demetrius Knight, but it's just one more clunky thing. So if you're the Bengals, sign them immediately as fast as possible, or don't. I mean, from a Browns perspective, don't. I mean, hell, have them both sit out the whole year and go back in the draft next year. But this is just organizational, complete and utter dysfunction.
The more I was listening to Stewart talk today, the more I was like, please don't leave him unsigned. I mean, he was just spouting off whatever he wanted to today.
It was very candid. I thought it was a really I thought it made him look great. Like I'm rooting for the kid from that standpoint. A prospect I hated as a draft prospect. He's everything I don't want at that position. The athleticism phenomenal, but there's no production. The Browns got my guy Aiden Huntington undrafted to have a very, very similar profile.
Last question for you tonight, Pete. What's going on with Cedric Tillman? We don't know. Are you worried? Should we be worried? Are they just being cautious? I'm worried.
Am I worried? Am I worried? No. Are they being cautious? Absolutely. Do we know what it is? No.
I'm worried just because of last year.
Well, I mean, unless you got in the head, I think the situation is different.
I guess. I don't know.
I don't know the answer to that. I mean, if we were to find out that there's some recurring thing, that is not the case, by the way. Flat out, I know that's not true. I don't know what the specifics are on this one, but like that would be where I'd be like, oh no, like being in a Chris Olave situation where you're sitting there going, oh man. But minor deal at this point. I'm focused on training camp with any of these guys. I'd rather be cautious. I don't want to be in a situation because like, we're hand-wringing about OTAs and this, that, and the other. And then like you see a guy like Joey Bosa, not surprisingly hurt, going to be out till training camp, or Steelers backup tight end Donald Parham ruptures Achilles, done for the year. Like as much as you want these guys to get work, you want them to be healthy for training camp and when it matters. So like you'll live with it. I for me, I'm not worried about Cedric Tillman in the physical part. I just want him to get more, and I want him to just get smarter. And that's not a knock on him saying he's dumb. It's just that was Tennessee didn't ask him to do anything. It showed in his rookie year. It looked really good in his second year. The physical piece is there. He's big and strong. He's fast. He's just not overall quick. It's that part. I think if it comes along, he's going to get better and better and better.
With that said, not many clips tonight because there's so much to talk about with OTAs and everything going on. Not OTAs, mandatory minicamp and everything going on. And the strange, OTAs after minicamp, which I still think is a strategic move to try to get more guys there. But we'll find out if that even matters or not.
That's interesting. I like that theory.
Yeah. And we'll see if that's what it's for, or if anybody does stick around that wouldn't have been there. Maybe Deontay, maybe they can just strap him down and keep him around for a couple practices. But any parting words, Pete, before we get out of here? We don't want to be late for Garage Beers, which is up next.
Subscribe to the OBR, help us out, support us any way you can. Obviously, if you like and subscribe, on any live stream, the more likes you get, the more it's going to instantly jump it in the sort of YouTube algorithm so that more people see it. That's obviously the best way to support us when you're watching live. But yeah, subscribe to the OBR as much as you can and support us from that standpoint. We're going to have more stuff from Lane coming out of what we learned in minicamp. Obviously, we're covering what we see every day and trying as much as we can to provide analysis without resorting to bland graphics that present, just 0 of 0 for Joe Flacco's day throwing the ball and expecting you to learn something from that.
Which, by the way, Pete Smith had months ago, I must say.
It's a burden.
A great call on that one. So it's hard being right that often, right, Pete?
This is true. Unfortunately, too often the issue I run into is I spoil the ending before people want to get there, and they get mad at me for it. It's never fun. Being early is not it is not the best way to go, but it is what it is.
It is what it is. The always fantastic Pete Smith. Follow him, read him at the OBR. It's a must. My name is Brad Ward. This has been another edition of The React. Keep it locked at theobr.com and the OBR streaming network, youtube.com/Orange and Brown Report. Hit like, subscribe, and the notification bell so you know every time we go live, as we have shows for you every night of the week. With that, everybody, stick around for Garage Beers. For Pete Smith, my name is Brad Ward. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening. We are out.